All right, we're back. Supposed to be quick. All right, we're going to look at some stories of the week. It's a little bit of news. It's a little bit of things happening. And we've got our co-hosts with us, Josh Marpet, Scott Lyons. We're going to talk. We're going to get their opinions on it. And if they've been following along, we know we're definitely going to talk about Shark Tank at some point and bonus points if we bring up the other show. All right, so here's the first story of the week. And we're trying more now to look at some of the security stories. So I don't know if you guys saw this, but BC Partners Medina Capital announced a definitive agreement, not a tentative agreement, it's definitive, to acquire the company Cryptzone. This popped up for me. They're a company I'd actually talked to a couple times, and I like some of the stuff that they've done. In the show notes, we put the link both to their Aller profile, which is something Paul and I like as a tool. But what I liked about this, I thought was interesting, it was we're seeing now where the equity money's coming in, and it's buying, as you've already pointed out, Josh, well-funded, well-established, good traction, good team. But now we're starting to see, as in this one, they're buying a couple different pieces. They're putting it together. So what do you think of that concept in general, and what do you think about this play in specific?
So I'm looking at the story, and I will say that Cryptzone appears to be a combination of a hardware and a software model. They've got co-location centers, which looks like they bought from Centurylink or joint ventured with Centurylink to grab. And so they've got hardware in that they've got their own sort of cloud, if you will, and they're also available in AWS. They do a user access control with something they call the software-defined perimeter. So if you imagine that that's coming as sort of a riff off software-defined networking, which that's what it sounds like to me, they're basically doing things like your perimeter is where we say it is and where we discuss where it should be, rather than just at the edge of your firewall. And that actually makes sense. Because with software-defined networking, you can move your bits around anywhere you want them, any way you want them. You don't have to have a physical switch or tap or whatever. So if you can take the perimeter and move it out or in as needed, that's pretty smart. I will give them that. That's actually a very cool idea. As for the BC Partners and Medina Capital acquiring it, that's interesting. Those are actually venture capital firms, okay? So if you've got a venture capital firm acquiring a company, it means that they're taking a controlling stake. It doesn't mean that they're taking over the company. They're going to fire the president and the CEO and whatever else. It means that they're taking over direct controlling interest of it. And they're going to say, keep growing, keep growing, keep growing. Here's some money, grow faster. Because we want to sell you to somebody else, say IBM or whomever, for that access control, for the hardware they've got with the co-location centers. They're a really nice blended approach. Now, as to their security and whether their security is any good, I haven't really played with it, so I can't answer that. Scott, have you touched them at all, or?
I haven't had a chance to touch them, but I'm going to take a look at it from a different approach than you will, right? You're completely correct with the whole angel investment and investors taking over. Looking at it the way a hacker would look at it. A hacker cares about three things, okay? Get in, get your data, and get out, right? So a lot of companies that are in security focus on the get in and the get out, right? Cryptzone is not uncommon or not Cryptzone is one of these companies that I would think, right, without knowing too technically in depth, only just reading topically about them. But there's a lot of companies that function in this market space. You know, you take a look at their competitors, right, as it's coming up next to me, of Pure Storage, NetApp, CyberArk, you know, Forescout, Pulse Secure, Exedium, Juniper, Symantec, you know, you're talking about really big names. So for a company to come basically out of the blue and get angel funding because they define where the perimeter is versus the other people who are on that list who are their competitors is actually kind of a big thing, right?
Right. So so let me go back to the other thing though. This is, and then we'll move on to the next story. But what I thought was, I mean, they already took a $15 million round. They're fairly well established. They're, you know, Aller is crowdsourced information, so I'm not sure if the run rates on those revenues is accurate or not. But what I thought was more interesting, and this is kind of where you were heading with this a little bit, Josh, and Scott, of course, I'd love your opinion on this too, is so they said, you know what, we can acquire, Centurylink was divesting all this stuff, we're going to grab it from Centurylink, and we're going to go grab this technology that we like, that's already got a team that we like, that's proven, it's got all this other stuff. Oh, and Medina's already got this other portfolio of security things. You know what, we're going to bring these all together, and we're going to go make them play nice. And so I think what was interesting that you pointed out, Josh, is that the VCs aren't coming in and saying, okay, it's going to run differently now, we're in charge. What they're saying is, no, we're going to take a controlling stake because we see a bigger picture if we put all these different things together. I think we're going to see more of that happening in the space. I think that the VCs, the institutional investors, the big dollars, they're going to start to realize that you got to stack stuff in order to make a bigger play. Do you guys agree? Are we going to see more of that, or this is once off and it'll happen every now and then?
So I think I absolutely agree with you, and here's why. Let me bring it back to risk, because to an investor, risk is everything. Okay, risk and time, to be honest with you. So if I can take 14 different things or 5 different things, or in this case, what do you got? You got data centers, you've got Cryptzone, you've got a couple of other companies that they've already got in their portfolio. Now they're saying, hey, all of you work together. You're now all a joint venture. We're not going to change what you do, but we really want you to work together. Okay, guys, just a hint. Then what you do is you de-risk a lot of this because you're spreading your money across multiple companies. If the co-location centers and the data centers just all of a sudden blow up because Centurylink screwed up and got rid of a really amazing one for whatever reason, amazing data center with a huge profit margin, well, guess what? We'll spread the wealth across everything as well. Again, you're hedging your bets. Every time you can hedge your bets by spreading your wealth across multiple companies, you're doing a good thing. Let me give you a little thing I learned from Dan Woolley at Mach 37. Brilliant guy. I consider him one of my mentors. He taught me that at any accelerator and at any venture capital fund, across about 100 companies, 90% of them die. Just go away. 30% of them die, 30% of them subsist, which is effectively the same as dying almost. And 30% of them will get to an A round, which is success. So, 33. Third. And the ones that get to an A round, they pay back the money to run the accelerator, the incubator, the whatever, okay? Yeah. And 1 or 2 or 3 of those 107 companies, they are the unicorns. They're the ones that give you your profit. So every accelerator, Y Combinator, Mach 37, everybody is aggregating, is hedging their bets. They're giving money to hundreds of companies, and most of them will never pay back. Some of them will pay back enough to make the money back, so you're revenue neutral. 1 or 2 of them will make you your gravy. So these companies are doing it rather than investing individually in 500 companies. They're saying, why don't we all work together and try and reduce the risk even more because all of you will help each other. They're hedging their bets. That makes a lot of sense.
And it seems too like if you're a VC and you're studying the broader marketplace, you have access to the business trends. And so as you're looking at your portfolio, it seems logical to me then too that they would say, you know, it's interesting. A lot of companies have this problem. These security companies haven't come together yet. We can fix that. Yep. And you're going to start bringing them together. Yep. What I would say then is if you're a security company today, pay attention to these trends and think about how do you make it easy for someone else to work with you in the future? Because I think it's not always going to be, and we'll talk in a minute about seed zone or seed rounds and everything else. But all right, so there's a company called Illumio. They released a new template that promises better security. I brought this up because it's on Read White Web, and I was kind of curious what you guys thought about it because I like some of the thoughts of this. I'm just trying to wrap my head around what I think of it, so I'm curious what you guys think of it. So it's an adaptive security company, and they just released the Illumio security templates. So the idea is it's a ready-to-use security policy for core data center and cloud applications. Are policies one size fits all? Is this a good strategy? Does this save people time? Is this helping them flick the right switches based on your impressions? Or is this going to be one of those that sounds good and it'll either get snapped up into somebody else or some folks are going to learn a little bit from it?
Or we could take it in a completely different direction, Michael.
Take it you want, brother.
Yeah, we could take it in a completely different direction and say, does it actually fit the business? You know, a lot of people understand holistically in the security industry that compliance is not just a checkbox. However, if you try to tell that to an executive, they're going to say, well, my political stance and how I'm viewed in the company and my metrics depend on that checkbox, right? Well, a checkbox at the end of the day is a checkbox, but can you take what's being said in that checkbox or template in this case and fit it to the business? See, that's a concept that a lot of people miss is, sure, SOX may be great for a business, but I'm healthcare. Does that really fit me? right? I'm not publicly traded, but there are things in socks that would fit my business, right? So can I just take parts from that, right? So when you're looking at a template or you're looking at a turnkey out of the box, whiz bang solution, plug it in and it's working, does it really work? I mean, how many times, Josh, Michael, have you guys seen companies make a purchase and either the purchase sits on the shelf or they don't have the technical knowledge to make it fit? Like, you have the technical knowledge to install it and your vendor has the technical knowledge to make it work, but then let's say it breaks 2 months down the road and it takes out 90% of your operations. Is it really worth it at that point? Are you really paying more for it down the road than you did up front? So you can come out with a template all day long for any type of GPO that you want, right? It doesn't really matter. Where the rubber meets the road is, does the template fit for the business? If you're making it a policy template, is it 90,000 foot view, or is it 90 to 10 to 90 to 10 and there's a roller coaster effect going all the way through the template?
Yeah, and you know that from my
what is a template these days?
I'm always going to ask people, what's the value, right? Are you saving me time? Are you increasing something? Here, so I pulled them up on Aller. This is interesting. I'll just leave it out there, and we're going to move on to the next story. They took a Series A round in January 2013 of $8 million. And then in September of 2013, they took a B round of almost $35 million. And in January of 2015, their C round was $100.5 million. But I noticed the name on that, Blackrock. Blackrock's been really building up a series of security portfolios. So, again, I'm glad I threw it in there because I feel like this tags on to our original one. They must solve something that's interesting enough, or they've got one hell of a pitch deck and a pretty good Rolodex that they've got people excited. Now, their revenue, they're a private company, it's estimated as $5 million, but they've got $143 million in total funding. And they put some stuff out that I think we could probably talk about for the rest of the day. So it's interesting, and if you're watching, I'd love to know what you think about it. Let me ask you guys a different question, though, and this came out of VentureBeat. The Tech Managers Challenge. How do you stay steeped in tech while focusing on leadership? Now, obviously, I spent a lot of time looking at leadership, but how about you guys, right? Because, and I'll just leave it as this, right? You lead people, you manage process, you boss nobody. So I don't want to talk about management. That's process stuff. You're leading people. You're working with people day to day, but you still want to keep yourself in the tech, or do you? How do you guys handle that? And what do you think of this story then? I mean, tell me your experiences, and then let's get into the story.
To help you finish your thought real quick and tie it back into the story that we just talked about, right? And then we'll get into the manager's issue. My thought on it is, and I'm going to say it here first, you're going to start to see a paradigm here very shortly of not only corporate attrition with small businesses that are coming up, but also you're going to start to see investors shape how security is done. Right? By pulling in all these companies and building out their portfolios and making the companies work together, you're going to start to see products that meet a broad range of problems and interests that then return ROI and reduce risk to the incubator. Anyways, Josh, I'm going to kick it over to you. I've talked enough.
No, it's fine. So for managers and technical leadership, it's an interesting question. You'll notice that a lot of job requisitions or job descriptions at companies say this is a technical manager position or this is a management position. And they mean that a manager is not technical, but that should never be the case. You don't have to be so technical that you can remember how to set up a firewall from memory, or so technical that you can remember every switch in Metasploit console, but you should be technical enough to understand what's going on. If you don't understand what's going on, how can your team know that you're understanding what they're doing? So again, you might not know every switch in Metasploit, but you know what Metasploit does, right? Okay, you may not know every piece of your firewall UI, but you have a basic understanding, and you could look up which ports are open if you needed to. And you know what? Honestly, these days, Google is our best friend. So if I need to do something, I'll Google it. I have the technical knowledge I have the understanding of the concepts, and I can extend that at will into the technical knowledge of how to perform some actual action.
Yeah, so here's what I liked about the story, and I'll throw these out, and then we can chat about them real quick. So it talks about depth versus leadership experience, and it says, if you're in the tech world, their phrase, you can never be too technical. And the more you understand, the better your decisions. You'll be more effective. You're going to be able to understand and make better decisions, even if a subordinate's not in the room. There's if we don't have time today, in the future, remind me, there's a thing called the empty chair approach that's useful a lot of times if you're a leader. If not this time, reach out. I'll make it happen. But then he talks about the fact that, well, hold on though, you got to invest in your leadership. Now, what I'll tell you is that's where I think, oddly enough, in security, it's easy, especially because most people in security leadership came from the security trenches. And so it's easy for us to stay engaged in that tech of it. Now, what they say are some ways to do it. Read. Books, blog posts, white papers, constant reading. Listen to podcasts. I've got 1 or 2 recommendations for you. We'd be happy to keep you teched in. But here's one that I don't see that I think is interesting. But I'm going to tie it to their last part, which is cultivate a hacker's mindset. I know every time somebody tells me we've got a skills shortage in security, when I get done eye rolling and collect my thoughts and try to look at it differently, what I always point out is that the aptitude that we're hiring for the most is an insatiable curiosity. I think that's what powers security more than anything else. Yes, there's a tenacity to it and there's a stick-to-itiveness, but that curiosity, and I think that matters. So let me ask you this. If a technology leader comes to you and says, guys, I've got a background and I know X, Y, and Z, I'm not really grokking what you guys are telling me about. Can you spin me up on it? You like that as an approach, or do you think the technology leader should always pretend they know everything?
No. God, no. A technology leader should never pretend they know everything. One of the best answers I can get is, I don't know, but I'll find out. Okay? Lying will only engender more lying. If you go, oh, I understand that. Oh, then you understand these 5 concepts that are built on that, right? Yeah, totally. I get that too. Yeah, sure. No. If you don't understand something, ask. Because if you honestly listen to your team when they explain it to you, they will gain more respect for you, not less. Okay? And I'm going to bring in a concept here, which I love. Have you ever heard of production versus infrastructure?
Nope, new one. Hit us with it.
Okay. So you can either produce, you can use your engines of production to produce your product, or you can use your engines of production to build more engines of production. So as a leader, I can go in and I can set up that firewall. I can fix that problem. I can build that server. Or I can go teach and mentor somebody to build servers and fix firewalls and do things. Guess what's more productive in the long run? Okay. Now, you might have absolutely limited resources. So when a company starts up, I'm going to be the chief cook and bottle washer. I'm going to be building those firewalls and servers and setting things up. But as we start hiring people, I'm going to teach them the way that I expect things to be done. I'm going to give them my vision and guidance, and they're going to perform those actions, which means that they're doing the work, and I'm getting the next set of people ready to do more work. And in the long run, that's more productive. Okay? So you have production versus building the infrastructure to perform more production. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I buy it.
And that's effectively what a leader can do. You can produce, or you can build infrastructure to produce for you.
And to add to that point, if you are a leader and you happen to be over top of tech teams, do not, under any circumstance, give those teams false information and then tell them to go forward. And when they do something wrong, you take it out on them. You know, I worked at a place, I'm not going to say and I'm not going to cough it, where I was told by the IT director who oversaw servers, server engineering, network engineering, desktop engineering, security, who oversaw those 4, I was told by him, and I quote him when I say this, that's okay, I can do all of this by myself. Well, we're a global 24/7, 365 company with multiple product offerings in multiple verticals and multiple markets. You really want to take this on by yourself? Good luck. You know, and then you watch that director turn around and start buying checkpoint firewalls off of eBay. It's interesting, you know. You will see a lot of people in your career struggle with the fact that either they go management, or they go management with a hacker mindset again, or they just say, screw it, I don't want to go management really, I just want to stay technical. You know, what it comes down to is, what are you comfortable with? You know, what makes you tick, right? So being able to work with other people, being able to work by yourself, that's why you see it so many times in candidate paperwork, right? Or job postings, right? And you really can't devalue that statement. Works well by yourself, works well with others. because what it comes down to at the end of the day, it's not a one-man show. A company is a multi-person, multifaceted, multi-verticaled, multi process organization that lives, it breathes, it moves forward. And sure, there is decay sometimes, and you have to cut off the dead arm. But the worst thing that you can do is feed people false information and then slap them on the wrist when they do things that are based off of what you say. So as a technical manager, you have to know enough so that your people don't snowball you.
Yeah, right? All right. So what I'm picking up from you guys and what I got from this article too is that it's good to be technical, but as a leader, your opportunity is to build the things that create more leaders. It's to build the things that benefit the business better, so you can keep one foot in tech, but really if you're getting overwhelmed, ask for help. Keep your curiosity. Don't worry about being perfect. Don't worry about hiring, knowing all the right stuff. You can hire people who know that stuff, and then you can guide them in the careers. All right, so let's talk about other sources of venture money, because I think, now this is my talk as I'll set this up, but I think this is an opportunity for security companies, and Paul and I have talked about this a couple times now. We're starting to see situations where retailers in particular have created like venture weeks. So not quite the venture investing arms, but they'll go work with startups, or they'll give them space, or they'll say, hey, come and work with us for a week or two, and some of you can beta test your stuff with us. Or whatnot. And what we've talked about is it's an interesting way, because if you're trying to get exposure or you're trying to get interest in something, and sometimes what you need is just a little bit of help from somebody else to come take a look at it. Well, the corporations benefit in those situations, because then they get to see what the startup mindset's like. It kind of breaks them out of that corporate rut, and it brings down some barriers. Everybody gets to figure it out. So there's an article in TechCrunch, why the top entrepreneurs are seeking corporate venture money. And it starts out talking about the relationship between NBC Universal and BuzzFeed and how that really helped them fit some stuff. But then as it carries on, it says, in fact, this is the part that really kind of stuck out to me. Over the last 5 years, the number of corporations making venture investments, has risen to more than 800. And CVCs deployed nearly $30 billion in funding across 1,300 plus deals in 2015, basically almost doubling 2014's record. I like this. I like this a lot for security companies. I think large organizations, not just the technology giants, I think big enterprises now trying to solve security challenges can probably, if they're having a good profitable year, I'd love to see more of them set aside some funding and start to take a look at security startups and weed that out, because gosh, what a great gauntlet to run people through. And then if it works, you've got an ownership stake in something that not only helps you, but maybe benefits your industry and benefits all of us at the same time. What do you guys think? And is there anything else in this article that jumped out to you as particularly impressive, or maybe danger zone? Stop. Don't go that way, Michael. What do you think?
So I'm going to take that one for a second, and I'm going to say that corporate venture capital, the CVCs you mentioned, is a wonderful thing, and there's a lot of reasons why. Number one, these corporations get access to innovation. A large corporation is possible to innovate, but it's a lot harder. There's a lot more bureaucracy. There's a lot more stifling of it. In the smaller companies, they can innovate. Well, a large corporation can get access to that creativity, get access to that innovation by merely talking to them. And if you invest, hey, we're going to pilot it inside of here. We're going to invest in you and pilot it here. What a wonderful idea. It's a win-win for both companies. It's a win-win in every way. And if the small company, their stuff doesn't work, what have they lost? A few weeks of time. Like you said, they've got some extra profit. All right, no problem. Now we've got some nice tax depreciation and tax write-offs. No big deal. We're good. Okay, you've got the possibility for not only the poaching or the using of innovation, but you've also got the reason that investors are moving to the right. We talked about A, B, and C rounds a little earlier, and there's angel and seed, of course, before that. Investors have moved to the right. They're not doing as much angel. They're not doing as much seed. And the reason for that is they want to de-risk. We keep talking about risk. And they de-risk their investments and shorten their investments, de-risking time, by saying, I'm going to invest in the A round, not the angel round. Okay, well, that leaves a really bare marketplace. And with a bare marketplace for investment comes opportunity. And these corporate venture capital, these large corporations are going, hey, there's an opportunity there. We can get in very cheap, very simply to a lot of small companies with some great innovation, and they love us, and they're going to be great partners for us. And we get technical leadership, we get engineering, we get DevOps, we get all these wonderful things. Like in the story, they mentioned NBC Universal leveraging BuzzFeed to run their social media campaign. What a great idea. BuzzFeed and social media, they kind of know what they're doing, okay? NBC Universal knows traditional media. They get the people that know social media and know mainstream modern media. This is a match made in heaven. It's perfect. It's exactly what they needed. So let me pull that together. You've basically got an opportunity where the smaller investors have left. The larger corporate investors who are not traditional institutional investors, the ones VC that come in for A, B, and C rounds, are going, we could throw 50 grand, we can throw 100 grand, we can throw 150 grand at these people, no real problem. And their technology looks awesome. They're great people. They really like us, and they've put together a personalized proof of concept just for us. Yeah, let's throw 50 grand at them. We'll try it. What's it going to hurt? They're incentivized to be there for us. They're not a large company that's going to walk in, sell us a product, and then go, yeah, it's sold. We're done with you. Have a nice day.
Well, yeah, and here's one of the things that I love about this as I look at it, and this is why I try to encourage these things. As I've been out working with more CISOs, I ask them now, everybody, first, of course, Paul, if you're watching, I always ask if they're watching our show and what they like best about it. But aside from that, I had to do that, guys. But, listen, what I also do is I ask them, hey, what do you do for startups? How are you finding them? How are you evaluating them? And I've actually found a couple people that they're looking at how they can make that work or how they can pull those different things together. And that's kind of exciting to me. So if you're listening right now and you're in an enterprise, let us know, like if your company said, hey, I'll give you some dollars every year. Now you got to work it more like an actual investment. It's not to pilot or to proof of test it. It's to go through more of a venture. Would you do that? Because I think that's exciting, and I think that's an area, because then flip it around. So many times we've talked on this program about how do you get that first client, those first 2 or 3 clients. Some of these corporate venture capital arms, not only, they'll take a stake in you, but oh, by the way, you just gained a client. So sure, you're not going to rack up the dollar signs, but they just said, come in, and we've got a vested interest in making sure that you work. Well, if they now have vested interest in making sure that you work, that means they're going to call 3 or 4 other people that they also partner with that are going to benefit from whatever it is that you're doing. And now we just got
referenceable client.
Yeah.
Referenceable client. The most valuable thing you can have short of revenue is a referenceable large client.
And so this case, you're going to get somebody who's going to stake you. They're going to be a referenceable client. You're going to be in their environment solving it. And by the way, then you're going to get more referenceable clients as a result of it. But also, right, and then I look at it, I go flip it around, and I go, so these corporations trying to figure out how to solve some of these problems, now you figured it out. You want people, you tell me, first of all, that we can't find talented folks. Well, I just gave you a pathway now to go pull talented folks into your organization, number 1. Number 2, if you want to test them out, first, great, you got it. Number 3, you can rotate some of your folks that you're keeping, that you're trying to keep, the ones that you think that you're going to keep because they should be happy they have a job, but the ones that are really wondering what it would be like if they could do a startup or something else, well, now you just gave them an opportunity to go try their hands at that too. And maybe they stay. Maybe they stay in exactly where you want them, but now they have a whole different mindset. They've learned a whole different skill set. Everybody gets better as a result. So I'm just looking at this going, all right, it sounds kind of exciting to me. Scott, how about you? What do you think?
Well, the flip side of all of this, and I always like to play devil's advocate whenever I'm talking about business, because it allows both Josh and I to see everything. Right, Josh? Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
We play devil's advocate a lot.
Yeah, we do. The flip side of this is that technologists and people who are watching Security Startup or Security Weekly, there's your pop, may not completely understand how investments work, right? So if I'm an investor and I have, let's say, $1 million, we'll just make things nice and simple. I find 10 companies, right, that I can now put $10,000 of investment into, right?
100.
Oh, 100,000. Sorry. Thank you. Again, I don't do math. I do tech. So if I have 10 companies that I'm putting $100,000 into, 9 of the 10 companies, based on current percentages, go away. Okay, that's $900,000 that you just kiss goodbye. Now, the one company at the end that I put 100,000 into goes and makes me 4 to 6 billion as an investment. That's one hell of an ROI, right? So when you're looking at it from an investment perspective, when you're talking about portfolio strength, you're talking about risk, you're talking about cutting risk, right? You have to understand how the investments work. And of course, I'm giving you like a really stripped down, simple concept of how investments work. It's super complicated. You have to come to our talks. We're going to demystify it. Just give us time, right? But when you're looking at it from an investment perspective, you're trying to say, how do I get the biggest bang for my buck? What company is going to get me that bang? How do I ensure that that company is successful to get me my bang for the buck? And then where do we take it from there? Right? Do I get my money out and say, nope, see you later? That's really not an investor. That's a
loaner. That's a loan.
It's either a loaner or it's a hedge fund guy.
All right, so let me do this then, so you raised out a good point, right? And Josh already talked about the fact that the investors and institutional investors, they're not expecting everything to be the unicorn or everything to be the home run. They're hoping that on average they make money and they do well. And so, right. But what I think is interesting here though too is, and this just popped into my head, if I'm a corporation today and somebody says, "What are you doing about security?" How awesome of an answer is it? We've set aside X% of profit to go invest in exciting technologies. And look, we're running it smart. We know they're not all going to pan out, but we're giving them a platform. We're giving them a way to test it out. We're working with them. This is helping us develop that culture and mindset in our organization and in the industry. Oh, and this is part of the way that we're both ensuring that we're doing the best that we can as an organization and that we're advancing the industry at the same time.
I got 2 words for you.
Thanks for coming to Congress. It's good seeing you. Keep up the good work.
I got 2 words for you, Michael. Check boxes.
That's one word.
But he pluralized it, so we'll just call it 2 words. It's okay.
There we go. Okay. So I got one word for you. Check boxes. I mean, if realistically, if somebody's coming to you saying, "What are you doing about your security?" What's the easiest way to show them that you're actually doing something about security? Well, let's hit a couple of check boxes. That's pulling a compliance like, I don't know, SOC 2. For policies and procedures to show that you're moving things forward, or maybe SOC 1 that you have your financials in place, or maybe it's HIPAA because you're a healthcare startup, or it's HIPAA plus NIST, right? That you're hitting these compliance boxes that you've had outside auditors come in and take a look at your stuff. That's really where the rubber's going to meet the road for companies that are coming up. How can I get the biggest bang for my buck that my investors are giving me to show my investors that I'm moving things forward, to prove that now I'm negating investor risk, that I can then go for those B, C, and D rounds of investment and really move to a VC status, right? Versus, well, I'm just sitting here, I've got a boat, I've got a plane, I've got a car. What else do you want me to do with your money?
Yeah, but there's also the fact that I'll play devil's advocate for a second. So Mike, Michael, your point about every company that goes, hey, we're dedicating 5% of our profit to working with exciting security companies, and an investor might just go playing devil's advocate might go, hey, are any of them proven? So you've got ways that's a wonderful thing and ways that's a delicately not good thing. So you've got to be very careful about it.
That's a good point.
Let's be honest.
Yeah, and it might also mean that CVCs might look more for Series A funded or Series B funded organizations and companies, not so much the seed rounds or what have you. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here. But these are the things that we try to take a look at on the startup program, and we're looking at different opportunities because what our goal has always been is, let's go look at it from the institutional investment or any investment side. Let's go take a look at it from the buying side. Let's go look at it from the startup side, because I think that when we look at all those different perspectives, we get a little bit better at how we run our businesses and how we incorporate security, right? So what we like to say on the show all the time is it's the business of security and it's the security of startups and the security of businesses. And so that's the type of stuff that we're trying to take a look at. So I have had a blast. I mean, obviously, I miss Paul. I've tried to hide the tears, but Scott, Josh, it's been great having you guys here. Didn't disappoint as I expected. And I think we covered a lot of information and got a date with everybody for April. So thank you guys for joining. Any last thoughts on your first time on Startup Security Weekly?
We'll be back.
Yeah. It's interesting when you start taking a look at how markets are performing and then add startups on top of that and really try to define what is and what is not a good venture for a startup, and then try to say, well, in a startup you need XYZ. You and Paul, Michael, to be doing something like this is of great value and great leadership in a market space to help people find the light at the end of the tunnel, or the money at the end of the tunnel,
and it's not a train. Choo choo. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's not a train that's going to run you over. It's actually a train that's going to stop and pick you up, put it on its back, and help carry you to your destination. You know, if people start watching these videos and they start watching Security Weekly and they start understanding entrepreneurship as it states as a whole, and start going to not just hacker conferences but also entrepreneur and small business conferences, you reach out to your local small business office, you know, the dream becomes a reality. You know, no longer is it I have a dream. No, it's I have a reality.
We're going to make dreams realities on this program. All right, well, there you have it. Startup Security, episode 16, the first one we did without Paul. I hope we did okay, buddy. But join us next week. We've got more and more interviews, more insights, more stories of the week. We'll update you on our journeys, and we're going to keep doing what we can to help out the startup security community.